Hey guys, my name is Aryan Kanaparthi, and this is my online history screencast. Today I'll be answering the question: what was the most important theme in the first few hundred years of American history? In my opinion, that's change. Change is an aspect of life that is entirely inevitable. However, the way that an individual or group sparks and drives change reveals their true colors. I believe that change, more specifically determination to effect change and the ability to cope with change, is a central theme of American history. Because at every turn, Americans took the initiative to change things and persevered through adversity. For example, we can look at the way the United States of America even came to be. It all began when colonists were growing tired of being mistreated by the British mainland. Countless actions by the Parliament forced the colonists to take action as the status quo was unbearable. Things like the Townshend Act, which heavily taxed imported British goods, the Boston Massacre, an incident where British soldiers shot and killed unarmed colonists, and the Coercive Acts, which essentially allowed the British to seize control of the Massachusetts government and its people, pushed the colonists to a point where change was demanded by all. Thus, the American Revolutionary War began, paving the way for the country we know today. After gaining independence, controversy began to rise around the ownership and operation of slaves. Slowly but surely, a rift began to form in the United Nations between those in favor of keeping slavery viable and those who opposed it. President Lincoln, who fought for unity and morality, went against Jefferson Davis and his Confederacy, who fought to save their way of life and keep the status quo in place. Yet again, those passionate individuals and groups recognized what they needed to change, and through their resilience and determination, the Union ultimately accomplished its goal of abolishing slavery. Continuing on, the American Industrial Revolution was also a period of massive change in the entire dynamic of the country. Citizens, as well as foreigners, were pouring into the cities and abandoning their countrysides to work in new factories. Unfortunately, with all the new technological advancements also came many humanitarian issues. Workers, including children, were being mistreated under the control of big corporations, yet they did not stand idly by, forming labor unions to push back against the injustices they were facing. Also, muckrakers or socially conscious journalists helped make the need for reform clear to the public, as well as individuals like Jane Addams, who took initiative in using her fortune to aid immigrants and their families who were on the losing end of the revolution. According to History.com, Addams responded to the needs of the community by establishing a nursery, dispensary, kindergarten, playground, gymnasium, and cooperative housing for young working women. Yet again, Americans identified the problem at hand and made a consistent effort to change the situation for the better. Following the Industrial Revolution, for the first time, America became an internationally active country by spreading its influence and riches to its surroundings in the Western Hemisphere. America put forth the fruitful technological changes of its industrialization out into the world, which paved the way for global modernization. Not long after, World War I began, which was the first massive war that America, and the rest of the world, experienced following the Industrial Revolution. Due to the number of American men shipped off to Europe, women were left to fill their shoes and take on jobs and roles that men traditionally handled. Women rose to the occasion of this major shift in the status quo by working together and paving a way for a new era of rebirth for women. The war was the spark that ignited the flame known as the Roaring Twenties, which was a major period of growth and evolution for women, as they completely redefined their stereotypical roles in society and pushed barriers in economical, political, and sexual freedom. Women took charge of their situation and confidently brought about the change that they had envisioned. Unfortunately, not long after the war, the Great Depression began and brought never before seen challenges on the American people. With barely any money in circulation, citizens were more desperate than ever for basic necessities. Despite the massive and sudden changes, Americans tackled this issue. Faced with this new way of living, citizens had to completely adapt and survive with what they had. Most came together within their own communities to deal with the problems together. Before long, church organized potlucks and thrift gardens, locally operated farms within cities, became plentiful as they were a simple and efficient way of distributing food while also boosting morale in the community. In fact, between 1931 and 1932, Detroit's thrift garden program provided food for about 20,000 people. To fight off the effects of the Depression, Franklin Roosevelt and his administration introduced the New Deal, which founded many organizations that gave citizens jobs and opportunities. One such organization was known as the WPA, or the Work Progress Administration. According to History.com, the WPA focused on building things like post offices, bridges, schools, highways, and parks. It also gave work to artists, writers, theater directors, and musicians. Americans were faced with a near impossible situation out of the blue, and they fought through that adversity. Like I said, change is inevitable, but what people do about it shows their true nature. Although the Depression was tragic and claimed over 7 million lives, it was the first time Americans were put in a situation like that, and they got through it. Moving on, as the United States entered World War II, everyday citizens were thrown into a state of constant angst and fear, seeing that the Japanese were capable of attacks such as Pearl Harbor. This put an immense amount of stress on the entire nation. That panic spawned an ideology of supporting American troops to the maximum capability of that country and its citizens. As a result, a rationing program was established in 1942 that issued stamps for everything from meat, sugar, fat, butter, vegetables, and fruit to gas, tires, clothing, and fuel oil. The entire population adjusted and coped with this new way of living for 3 whole years. However, American forces were facing challenges of their own in the form of new, advanced methods of combat. Warfare took a major leap at the cusp of World War II as newer, more efficient weapons came into play, not to mention stronger tanks, planes, and even nuclear weapons were on the table. It wasn't so much a matter of aim and numbers, but rather a heavy emphasis on strategy, stealth, and firepower. Additionally, the enemy in the way, the Nazis, were capable of never-before-seen atrocities that the Allied forces had to combat against and end. In the end, American forces persevered and contributed to the Allied victory. In the face of change and adversity, the Americans' mindset and drive assured them the victory. Change is ever-present and often scares people, yet it is also the one aspect of life that is completely guaranteed. However, dealing with change as well as inciting change have become core values of Americans. I believe that people do not learn, grow, or evolve in any way without change. Change has and will continue to be a fundamental part of American development and existence. As I've demonstrated at every step of American history, whether it was the need for change in the status quo, or the needs for adapting to a change or a foreign situation, the actions of those individuals and groups of Americans who rose to the occasion that called for them was the key to American prosperity. Here's my works cited page. And thank you for watching.